Oh, hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's your number one Fat Asian coming in today with a really fun end of the decade video. I thought with 2020 right around the corner and the end of the decade right upon us, wouldn't it be fun to go ahead and take a trip down memory lane and see who is the best player to buy in every respective FIFA dating back from FIFA 20 to FIFA 10. Now, first off, this list is just my opinion. It is not the definitive best player to buy in career mode because, you know, what you figure is the best player is kind of subjective. But I did come up with a couple of rules. Number one, high potential. And obviously stats are going to matter. Some players on this list are going to start out real low and get really high due to a high-end potential. Which leads me to my next judging factor, the younger, the better. The reason why a younger player is better is pretty obvious. You got a longer runway for them to grow because once you hit around 30 in pretty much all these FIFAs, you rapidly decline. And in my opinion, the majority of the fun that comes from career mode is seeing your team grow, and having young players grow is uber satisfying. And that puts me on to the third factor that I'm going to be grading on, which is price. Everyone wants Mbappe, but not everyone can afford Mbappe. And for that fact alone, it makes him pretty inaccessible to the majority of teams, even top flight teams in FIFA Career Mode. So I wanted to keep the price range of these players around 25 million or below. Something that, you know, even like the mid to low tier teams after a good season or selling a couple of players could obtain. And the fourth factor was how effective they were on the pitch, or how well they fit the meta. There are a ton of players out there that have the superior stats, but for whatever reason, just do not live up to it when put on the virtual pitch. And then there are some players that don't really have all the great stats, but for some reason, they play like gods. You've seen them in previous FIFAs, like Renato Sanches in FIFA 17, Victor Ibarbo in FIFA 14, Jack Butland in FIFA 17. You remember that shit? It was a weird time. And the fifth rule is no repeats, because if I didn't do this, then Santi Lemans would just be like half of this list. And that's no fun. So I'm going to give you a unique player for every single FIFA dating back to FIFA 10. I also went ahead and surveyed you guys on who were the most legendary buys that you have gotten over your past decade of playing career mode. And reading all your responses were both super helpful and really nostalgic. So thank you for all that. And just to sprinkle the stakes a little bit higher, at the end of this video, I will go ahead and choose one from this list and anoint him the player to buy in career mode of the decade. And if that doesn't get your nostalgia boner all hard, I don't know what will. Take that hard nostalgia boner, smush it into the like button right now. Subscribe if you are new. And if you really don't like my list, the homie BCHD went ahead and did a very similar list over on his channel. I'll link up to that in the iThingies and actually link to it at the end of the video. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let us go ahead and jump in with the Time Wizard and take a trip back to FIFA 10.
Go Time Wizard!
Yes, FIFA 10, the first FIFA I ever bought, actually. I was a PES guy up until then, but once I got in career mode, there was no looking back. And when I went online and typed into Ask Jeeves, who should I buy in career mode? One name kept on showing up. Pato. 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 Anyone who played FIFA 10 and bought Pato, you knew how freaking deadly this guy was. He was the Mbappe of his time, and in FIFA 10, maybe even more effective. His combination of pace, skill, dribbling, and shooting made him the perfect young striker to buy in FIFA 10. And with a potential of 92, he became a living god just after a couple seasons. Just look at some of the ridiculous things that you could do in FIFA 10 with this kid. We really thought he was like the next R9 Ronaldo. And a starting value of 18 million, even mid-tier teams could afford him after a decent season, or if you sold off a couple of parts. Thus making Alexander Pato the best player that you could buy in FIFA 10 career mode. Honorable mentions, though, to the homeboys Boyan and Jack Wilshere. We thought at the time that they were the next Messi and Gerrard. We were wrong. But now let's move on to FIFA 11. Around the time that FIFA 11 released, we kept hearing about this 17-year-old out of Anderlecht that was going to be the next Drogba, but was bigger and faster. 6'3", 214 pounds at 17 years old, bro. 17. He was a genetic specimen that made any career mode manager salivate at just the mere thought of what he could become. FIFA 11, you gotta remember, was on the old engine that heavily relied on pace and power, and those were two things that this player had in abundance. You might know his name, a little bit of guesses, you know, just guess, anything. Yes, This was the young Romelu Lukaku. At the start of FIFA 11, he had 83 sprint speed, 91 strength at 17 years of age. And with the high-end potential of 88, that meant that his sprint speed and his strength would easily reach 99, amid a myriad of other stats that would be in the dark reads when he was fully evolved. On top of that, you give him 4-star weak foot and 4-star skill moves. Yes, they gave Lukaku 4-star skill moves in FIFA 11. And top it up with a price tag of a little bit over 6 million at the start of Career Mode. Forget about it. There is not a single player that you could buy that is a better investment, more dominating in FIFA 11 than young Romelu Lukaku. Although, quick shout outs to Wellington. If you remember this guy, he was pace, kind of like Alexander Pato light. And I know a lot of you guys who played FIFA 10, FIFA 11, you bought this kid. He was pretty good. And my other shout out for FIFA 11 is Santon. You would buy him for cheap. You would play him on either the right back or the left back. I had to give some fullbacks some love, so there he is. And with that, let's move on to FIFA 12. Mario Gtze was unstoppable in FIFA 12. Remember, this was at the height of Jurgen Klopp being at Dortmund, and Gtze was his prized creative pupil. The meta of FIFA 12 found your cams in a lot of scoring positions, so high pace, agility, and ability to hit a finesse shot made cams extra deadly in this FIFA. And Gtze, once he got a little bit of growth in him, became a mini Kaká. Pace, vision, and craftiness to go ahead, find a bit of space, and finish it. And when I was surveying you guys on who was the best player that you've ever used in Career Mode, Gtze came up a lot, which is gonna make a lot of people unhappy when I say that Gtze isn't my top player to buy in FIFA 12. It's Adrian. Who? Yes, Adrian. Adrian? This guy, this wonderkind, this baby-faced Brazilian godling, was essentially a Gtze clone for a fraction of the price. And while Gtze was the more popular name, he has the brand name product, he also came with a hefty price tag. At the start of FIFA 12 Career Mode, he was coming in at 45 million. So as dominating as he was, when you compare it to Adrian's starting off price of 6.5, you could see why I might skew a different way. And I don't know if you noticed, but I'm Asian, and we love a good bargain. And that's no knock on Gtze, because he could have easily been the best player to buy from FIFA 11 to FIFA 13, maybe even FIFA 14. And even though I'm not going to put him as top player to buy in this FIFA, he's a contender for best player to buy, period, over the past decade. But when both of them hit their high-end potential and you used them on the pitch, and I used both of them in this Career Mode extensively, Adrian functioned pretty much identical. I couldn't notice. They're like the same height. They're both quick. They both can deliver a fantastic finesse shot. And while nothing ever came of this player in real life, he was a god in FIFA 12. And my honorable mention is the legend Lucas Piazza. Tip of the hat to you for being the best cheap young center forward / winger that you could buy from FIFA 12 to around FIFA 15. Which then puts us on to FIFA 13. My pick for the best player to buy in FIFA 13 Career Mode was El Shaarawy. He was a center forward back then, and on the previous gen, you could do some pretty disgusting skill goals with him back in the day. In many ways, he was quite similar to Alexander Pato, who preceded him at AC Milan. Skills, pace, dribbling, and shooting, he was an absolute terror. And with a price tag of 8.5 million at the start of Career Mode, very, very affordable. And with the potential of 87, what you got after a few seasons was a Neymar caliber player. And if you used him on that AC Milan team alongside the likes of DeSiglio and Mario Balotelli, it was just such a fun team to use with so many good young talents. Good times. And honorable mentions for FIFA 13 Career Mode were Luis Muriel. If you used Luis Muriel, you knew exactly what you were about. You were a pace whore. Good for you. And shout out to the first center back on the list, Nastasic. Dude was such a fantastic bargain, an absolute brick wall for anyone who bought him. But now let's move on to FIFA 14. FIFA 14 was the first FIFA to make a jump onto the next-gen consoles. And in my opinion, FIFA 14, the worst gameplay of any FIFA, period. The meta was almost entirely have really fast, pacey wingers, have them bomb down the wing, and cross it into a tall striker. And when it comes to wingers, I can guarantee in FIFA 14 Career Mode, there was not one winger bought more than Zakaria Bakkali. The diminutive Belgian winger was cheap, had high potential, and played for PSV, which seemed to be a young talent factory at the time. 4-star skill moves, 4-star weak foot, and standing at 5'5", he was able to wiggle his way through defenses like a gnome ninja. He did have a little bit of an Achilles heel though, in that his stamina was an awful 55. And back then, there wasn't really a way to train stamina if I remember correctly, so you basically had to pray to the growth gods or use him as a super sub. But for the initial price tag of 3.6 million, it was hard to go wrong either way. And for the sheer fact that probably everyone who's watching this bought or used this guy at some point, that's why I had to put him at the #1 spot in FIFA 14. Honorable mentions, of course, to Anthony Martial, who starts out at a 63 but gets all the way up to an 87 and only cost under $1 million. If you did a Road to Glory career mode in FIFA 14, you probably bought Anthony Martial. And then a special shout out, and this is kind of heartbreaking, but shout outs to Junior Malanda. We lost him way too soon. He very tragically passed away. I know obviously there are bigger things than FIFA and career mode, but it hit our community especially hard because he was the player to buy at CDM. He was the youngster to get. And to see him pass was really sobering. It makes you realize that, you know, not everything in life is given, and every day that we have is a gift. So RIP to Junior Malanda. I hope you're breaking up playing the big pitch in the sky, bro. On that somber note, let's move on to FIFA 15.
Buy Lacazette. Buy Lacazette. Buy Lacazette.
Yeah, when I surveyed you guys on who was the best player you've ever bought in career mode, his name came up, specifically Leon Lacazette. Not Arsenal Lacazette, who's fine, but he didn't have a candle to Leon Lacazette. He was the definitive striker to buy in FIFA 15, and maybe the definitive striker to buy in any FIFA over the past decade. But specifically for FIFA 15 and FIFA 16, forget about it. He just did everything so well. Pace, dribbling, finishing, potential, and played up to those stats too. If you had him, you were just bagging in goals at a voracious pace. And at a starting price tag of $12.5 million, he was obtainable for pretty much any top flight team. Leon Lacazette was a unicorn, a mythical beast from a far off land. And I remember back then, if you were a fan of a Premier League team, and they were having some type of striker problems, the first thing you would think in your mind is like, man, I hope we buy Lacazette. And I think a lot of that honestly came from all of us using Lacazette in career mode because how dominant he was. But looking through the comment section, there was just like a bunch of guys who were like, yeah, I bagged 40 goals with him in a season. I bagged 50 goals with him in a season. And I believe it. You were probably playing on professional, but I believe it. That's why he's the best player to buy in FIFA 15. Honorable mention, though, to the monster who showed up in FIFA 15 and has yet to leave us, and that is Untitled Chapter. He was available in FIFA 14, but his potential wasn't as high as it was now, and now has become the bane of every career mode YouTuber comment section since. And also a shout out to the center back Marquinhos, who for $8 million could get all the way up to an 88 and was lightning quick for a center back. Which now puts us on to FIFA 16. Center forward Paulo Dybala was a problem in FIFA 16. This was his first season over at Juventus, and while he was a little bit more on the expensive side, I believe he's the most expensive player to appear on this list, coming in at 23.5 million euros to start off the career mode. He was defined by this, right out the gate. 89 dribbling, 90 ball control, 91 agility, 90 acceleration, 87 finishing. And the message that those stats that he has should scream to you is that he was unmarkable. At 5'9", and with those stats, he was going to find space, whether you liked it or not. And with 81 curve and 83 long shots, he was going to put it in from anywhere without lube. And those are his stats at the start of career mode, which meant when fully evolved, Dybala would get crazy stats like a curve of 99, long shots of 99, shot power of 99, and anywhere 40 meters and in, he was a threat. And this one was a tough one because there were other strong contenders for FIFA 16. My personal favorite was Donald Briombola. Only 8 million, starts out at 76, gets all the way up to an 88, and in my opinion was like a stronger Lacazette. And then another honorable mention to Alen Halilovic, who got the potential of 90, and he was like decently priced. I think you can get it for about 12.5 million. Never lived up to that potential, did he? FIFA 17. There were a lot of great players to buy in FIFA 17. Kylian Mbappe burst onto the scene, the baby killer. Then there was Malongstar. Everyone and their mama bought this guy. He was a center back, he was athletic, he was only 6 mil and can get all the way up to a potential of 88. But if there was a singular player that defined FIFA 17 for all of its greatness and all of its flaws, it was Renato Sanches. If you played FIFA 17, you knew about Renato Sanches. Not just career mode, but any game mode. If you used him, you knew about him. For whatever reason, Renato Sanches was a god in this game, with his gold 78 card regularly outplaying icons in FUT. It was just something in the coding, and FIFA 17 had a lot of these, where there were just like players that were kind of low rated, but played out of their minds. The big names that stand out are like Jack Butlin, Renato Sanches, and Anthony Martial were all ridiculous in this game. It's very hard to explain for people who didn't use him how dominant this little guy was. Like defensively, he felt like a modern day Gtze with his pace, his aggression, and his stamina. He could fly all over the pitch, breaking up play with ease. But then when it came to going forward, his long shots were like prime Lampard. You remember his long shots. Ugh. Disgusting. With a potential of 88, his well-rounded stats, and a price tag of 10 million at the start of career mode, you would get essentially a mini Hullet in your team. And if that wasn't absurd enough, there's this video out there by Gtze Manu who takes him to 99 overall with training. And while he would only be godly in this FIFA alone, pretty much, I would say, out of everyone on this list, he is the single most OP for his respective FIFA. But we must move on to FIFA 18. You knew I had to put him on this list somewhere. It wasn't going to be a list of the best players to buy over the past decade in career mode if Gtze Lemans isn't on there. He made the honorable mention list earlier, but FIFA 18 was the slot that I could fit him in. And honestly, you could put him in anywhere from FIFA 14 to FIFA 20. I would wager any amount of money that the two most commented words in all of career mode YouTube history are Santi Lemans. Since FIFA 15, people have been posting this on career mode videos non-stop. Santi Lemans is basically a meme at this point. And this might shock you. Personally, I've never been a big fan of Lemans. I don't usually sign him all that much. Call me a hipster if you want. And when you use him, he's kind of underwhelming physically. And yes, I get it. His long shots and his free kicks are ridiculous. But in my opinion, it's kind of more of a luxury than a priority in the stats that I look for in a central mid. Personally, I think that there were a lot of other center mids that fit the meta better. But to counterpart that, at his max growth, we have seen him get stats like 99 long shots and 99 finishing. So when you got those in your back pocket, do you really need to be all that athletic? But anyway, honorable mentions for FIFA 18. Matthijs de Ligt, he burst onto the scene over here, a little bit pricey, 16.5 million, but he was easily the best young defender to get in this series. And a shout out to Ezequiel Barco, 11.5 million for 89 potential winger. He was brilliant, he's pacey, and he usually, when I used him, played way beyond his stats. We get into the home stretch here with FIFA 19. FIFA 19 had a lot of interesting choices to go off of. I think Hudson-Odoi, starting on a 71, 4.7 million, becomes a great all-round winger for anyone to buy for cheap. And of course, there's reincarnated Kaká, aka João Felix. Reminded me a lot of Dybala, but two-footed. When it came down to the best player to buy in FIFA 19, and this one was one of the tougher ones, I went with Tonali. You know, first point, starts out at 73, can get all the way up to a potential of 90. Fantastic. Price tag 7.5 million, highly affordable. And with those factors alone, with the growth of 90, he's always going to be a good investment no matter what. You could literally just like never play him and he'll grow and he'll still offer you profit in the transfer market. But if you do play him, you put him on the pitch, this motherfucker, he's sneaky fast, he's really strong, he's excellent at breaking up play. And when he's fully grown, he becomes an unpassable wall in that defensive midfield role. Look at this. He can get up to like 98 strength, 87 stamina, 87 acceleration, 94 marking, and 99 stand tackle. Imagine a bigger, faster, stronger version of Gtze who can actually shoot a little bit. And that makes Tonali my favorite player to go ahead and buy in FIFA 19. Which brings us to modern day FIFA 20. And while the game has only been out for a couple of months, I think that there is far and away a front runner for the best player to buy in career mode, and that of course is the wonderkin out of Barcelona, Ansu Fati. Now let's clear the air here. FIFA has had a horrible habit of overrating Barcelona youth products. Just take a look at the past decade of FIFAs and you can see that it is littered with the dusty corpses of the likes of Levitch, Boyan, Munir, Sergi Samper. There's just so many. All of whom, at one point, had massive high-end potentials in career mode, and the majority of them did not meet those potentials. Ansu Fati, though, is not that. Out of the box, he's coming in with dark greens in pretty much all of his movement stats, and a massive growth curve and potential of 90. And what's scary is, considering how promising he's been playing this season, he could go higher in potential. There's a lot of FIFA 20 to be played, and stats and potentials are updated every week, so Who knows? And for FIFA 20, I'm actually not going to do any honorable mentions just because the game's only been out for a couple of months. Maybe another wonderkin gets added, or maybe the meta changes and heading becomes a thing, so tall strikers like Halil would actually be up there. You never know, but for now, I'm only really comfortable naming Ansu Fati, which means that the time has come. I have to go ahead and decide the player to buy in career mode of the decade. And after thinking long and hard and weighing the impacts over the course of multiple FIFAs, it came down to 3 names: Alexander Lacazette, Mario Gtze, and Untitled Chapter. And the best player to buy in FIFA Career Mode for the past decade, it has to be Ahmed Moussa. No, I'm kidding. It's Untitled Chapter. Yes, I know. It's the easy choice, but it's the undeniable choice. I actually don't want it to be him. I expressed when I talked about him that I personally don't like him, but it would just be disingenuous not to name him the player to buy over the past decade. Literally, from his introduction in FIFA 14 to now, FIFA 20, he has been viable and an excellent purchase in every single one of the FIFAs. And that is something you simply cannot say for everyone else on this list. So with that, I crown Zakaria Bakkali as the player to buy of the decade. And with that, that is pretty much going to conclude my best players to buy from FIFA 10 to FIFA 20. Did you agree with my list? Did you hate my list? Let me know where I messed up, where I did well in the comments down below. And if you didn't like my list, maybe go ahead and check out BCHD because he did a similar video on his channel. I'd like to give a quick shout out to my homeboy Justin for riding me the 360 to get some footage on this. And also shout outs to the homies Channing Sports, Flickify, and Chalupawana providing me some growth tests on the modern day FIFA. Saved me a lot of time. And lastly, thank you to you, the people of the Fat Asian Nation, for this amazing year that I've had. I get to play video games for a living, and that's pretty cool. And I know that that wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for you guys, and for that, I am eternally grateful. And on that note, Happy New Year's, guys. See you in 2020, and as always, stay thick.